everybody, this is GGB. Today we're going to be talking about all the Saturday games. Let's get into it. 11 o'clock with number 2, Cincinnati traveling to Navy. Cincinnati appeared by 28 points on ESPN2. Cincinnati is one of those last remaining 4 group of 5 teams that have a shot at the playoffs, with Coastal Carolina going down on Wednesday to App State. You still got Cincy, you still got SMU, you still got San Diego State, and you still got UTSA. But let's be honest here. Cincy has the most direct path to the playoffs. Again, if they win out, they'll have they likely have a spot in the playoffs for them. Maybe even the 2 seed. Who knows? Last week, Cincinnati proved how great they were again with a 56-21 rout of UCF. Desmond Ridder didn't have the best day, only went 13-23 for 140 yards, a touchdown, 0 receptions. Jerome Ford went off. He had 20 carries, 189 yards, 4 touchdowns. Leonard Taylor through the air had 4 catches for 47 yards. Navy last week lost 35-17 at Memphis. Ty Lavatai went 3 of 4, threw for 27 yards and a touchdown. Isaac Ruas had 18 carries for 75 yards, and Michael Cooper had 1 catch for 21 yards and a touchdown. This series has been Navy's, really. Navy's 3-1 against Cincy all time, but the last time they played, 2018, that was when Cincy was starting to get, well, I don't know. I think 2019 was the season where they hired Luke Fickell, so never mind. Luke Fickell has never beaten Navy in his career. But last game did go to Cincy in 2018. So this isn't all that interesting. I mean, if you want to watch Cincy play, I mean, by all means. If you're a big Cincy fan, or if you really want to see if Cincy's all that, this is your best chance on ESPN2. A lot of people do have ESPN2. I mean, this is your shot to see if Cincy's really worth all that hype. This is one of the few games. Actually, they've had a decent amount of games nationally televised, which I don't know how you've missed all of them, because they played in Notre Dame and Indiana, and I think UCF was on ABC last week. But I mean, if you want to watch a good team beat up on a not great team, 1-5 this year is Navy. I mean, be my guest. It's just really interesting. What Navy's going through. This is a really down year for them. This is a year where this is kind of a game they kind of need to win, because if you don't win this one, you fall to 1-6, and you have to win 5 straight to get to a bowl game. And I just don't know if you can do that, really. I don't know if it's going to be possible. So, I think this is obviously Cincy's game to win. I think they're a much better football team. I might not even record this one because I'm going to be taking a test on Saturday, and I'm going to have to record all the games I want to watch so that I can watch them later. I don't think I'm going to record this one. Cincy's just going to crush Navy. It's not even going to be all that close. 11 o'clock, we got number 3, Oklahoma traveling to Kansas. Oklahoma's favored 38.5 points on ESPN. Oklahoma last week proved me wrong. They covered the spread. First time they've covered the spread against a Power 5 opponent all year. Caleb Williams just seems to have a different spark with this offense that Spencer Rattler just simply didn't have. Went 18-23 for 295 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 picks. Kennedy Brooks on 20 carries for 153 yards and a touchdown. Michael Woods had 3 catches for 75 yards. Now, I wouldn't get too full of myself against if you're Oklahoma, because TCU's a pretty solid football team. You got some much tougher teams ahead of you. You still have an Iowa State game ahead of you that looks really difficult, the way that Iowa State's playing. You have an Oklahoma State game at the end of the year. You have Baylor coming up at some point. You still have arguably your 3 toughest games left, really. So it's going to be interesting, that's for sure. This one's not all that interesting, though. Kansas is like something like 1-5. They lost 41-14 to Texas Tech last week. Jason Beam went 11-21, threw for 80 yards, 0 touchdowns and a pick. Not the best day if you're the starting quarterback for a football team. Devin Neal had 15 carries for 54 yards, and Luke Grimm had 3 catches for 33 yards and a touchdown. So Oklahoma's 78-27 all-time against Kansas, which honestly, it surprised me that Kansas won 27 games. Now, that's, to be fair, I was not alive. That's a 16-game win streak for Oklahoma. The Kansas has not won since 1997. This is just an obvious Oklahoma win. It's like Lance Leipold can think all he wants, that he's going to make his team better, and it's going to be like a whole thing. No. Sorry, dude. Kansas is a long-term project, and maybe you can turn them around, maybe you can make them a decent football team. I mean, people have done crazier things. I mean, Sonny Dykes is transferring SMU into a good program after getting the death penalty. I mean, Rutgers has somewhat turned around. I mean, like, programs that have sucked for a long time have been turned around. But it's just, this is not a Kansas team that I have a lot of faith in to win a football game. It's just not the talent that Lance Leipold had at Buffalo. He just doesn't have at Kansas, which is an insane statement, but it's true. Buffalo was... I would rather go to Buffalo to play football than Kansas. If we're going to be honest, Buffalo at least shows that they have a path to the NFL. Buffalo players haven't made it into the NFL before. I can't name a single Kansas player. I can't name a single Kansas player in the league right now. Keith Talib used to be there, but he's not anymore. I could not name a Kansas player if you asked me to. Like, I can name some Buffalo players. Jarrett Patterson went to Buffalo. Tyree Jackson went to Buffalo. Like, there's some Buffalo players in the NFL. There's just no Kansas players, and it's just like, yeah, I don't think Kansas has the talent here to even, like, really keep it close with Kansas. Lance Leipold, I believe, is a good head coach, and maybe he can turn it around in Kansas, but honestly, this is a rough program to get your first Power 5 head coaching gig with, and I just don't think you can win today. Sorry, Kansas, Oklahoma's just going to obliterate Kansas. Give me Oklahoma to win and cover the spread. 11 o'clock, we have Northwestern traveling to number 6, Michigan. Michigan favorite at 23.5 points on Fox, which is honestly a surprise to me, and I'll explain to that later on. But Northwestern's coming off a win, 21-7 against Rutgers. Ryan Helinski went 18-33, threw for 267 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. Andrew Clare had 13 carries on the ground for 63 yards and a touchdown. And Stephon Robinson had 5 catches for 115 yards. Michigan last week, coming off a weird game where they barely won. Actually, it was like 2 weeks ago now. They had their bye last week, but they had a 32-29 win at Nebraska, a game that arguably Nebraska should have won. Michigan was just more clutch down the stretch than Nebraska, but Cade McNamara had a pretty good day, 22 of 38, threw for 255 yards with that interception, and he had 0 touchdowns. Hassan Haskins had 21 carries for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns, just proving yet again that Michigan is one of the better ground games in the entire NCAA, and Dalen Baldwin was their leading receiver. Northwestern is 15-58 against Michigan all time. Last 6 games have gone to Michigan, and Michigan's won 11 out of the last 12. This is why I don't like... Michigan's coming off a tough game against Nebraska, right? They had their bye. I understand all that. Northwestern's coming off a win against Rutgers. A Rutgers team that actually held it close with Michigan, right? So it's like the first reason. They beat a team that held it close with Michigan. Why are they underdogs by 23.5 points, right? They're coming off a win against Rutgers, like a 14-point win over Rutgers, where Michigan only beat them like 3 points or something like that. Maybe a touchdown. It was a close game. Michigan... Oh, sorry. Another thing is Northwestern's coaching. I mean, like it or not, Pat Fitzgerald is a good head coach. And while he's having a down year this year, I believe any game, he can have a game in which he beats you. I mean, I feel like that's the case. Northwestern's normally a good enough football team to make that happen. Make it happen, Captain. I don't think this should be a 23.5 point spread. I really don't. Everything about it is saying this is not a good idea to bet on Michigan here. If I had to put my money on a team, I'd put my money on Rutgers to cover. I still think Michigan's going to win. But I think it's going to be a lot closer than that 23.5 point spread. 11 o'clock, we got Illinois traveling to number 7, Penn State. Penn State fair by 23.5 points on ABC. Illinois is coming off a 24-0 loss to Wisconsin. Rather disappointing, I would say. Artur Sitkowski, their starting quarterback, threw 27 passes, completed 8 of them, and threw for 55 yards. Oof, dude. Oof. Talk about, honestly, if you were starting him in fantasy and it was the NFL, you'd be like, oh my god, I gotta cut this guy immediately. That is an atrocious performance. Just like absolutely god awful. 55 yards passing, that's like, I mean, Navy threw the ball only 4 times and they got 27. They got half of what you had in 3 completions. You got, I guess, an 8, but they got what you got what you got with only passing the ball 4 times. What took you pass the ball 27? I mean, it's insane. Chase Brown also not a very productive day through the ground. 8 carries for 35 yards. Isaiah Williams had 4 catches for 23 yards, but Illinois is coming off a bye, so that's dangerous if you're Penn State. But Penn State's also coming off a bye 2 weeks ago. They lost 23-20 at number 3 Iowa. Now Iowa then moved up to number 2 and then fell to number 11 after they lost to Purdue. Sean Clifford in that game went 15-25, threw for 146 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 3 carries for 36 yards and a touchdown. He was their leading rusher on the day. Nico Ragaini. No, I can't be right. No, I was looking at the wrong one. John Dotson was their leading receiver. I was tired last night, so I think I put down the Iowa receiver. He was not their leading receiver. What am I thinking of? Illinois went 5-20 against Penn State all time, and Penn State has won the last 3-game win streak for Penn State, and they've won 6 out of the last 7. It's an interesting game. They're both coming off buys, right? So they have time. Interesting part is Sean Clifford hasn't practiced this week, right? And you're talking about a team that kind of relies a lot on the quarterback. You look at, it's not like if Cade McNamara went down, you'd be like, okay, just got to rely on some Hassan Haskins some more. Or if Georgia's quarterback went, that's already happened. Georgia's starting quarterback's already gone down, and Stetson Bennett comes in, and he's fine, but you rely a lot on the ground game and the defense. Penn State's not a team like that. The ground game is not good enough to handle it by itself. I like some players individually and what they bring to the team. Kayvon Lee's a great runner. I like the explosiveness that Lovett brings. I mean, there's a lot of things I like about the running back. Thinking that the entire game has to be put on their shoulders, just hell no. I just don't see that happening. Now, Sean Clifford might play in this game, honestly. James Franklin was being a little bit secretive about what his status is, but he was at practice, he was doing so. Wasn't attempting any throws, which is concerning, but, it's interesting. I don't know. If Sean Clifford's not able to go, Jaquan Roberson is not a good. He didn't look good. He looked really bad. He was overthrowing literally everyone. And I would not be surprised if the true freshman beats him for the top because, honestly, it's harder to look worse than that. If you're overthrowing anyone, guess what? That leads to a lot of interceptions. Because normally there's a safety over the top that can make a play on the ball. I don't know. I don't know about this Penn State team. I think they're going to win against Illinois, but, if they don't have Sean Clifford, I just don't see them beating a team by 23.5 points. Especially a Power 5 football team. Come on. 11 o'clock at number 16, Wake Forest traveling to Army. Wake Forest only favored by 3 points in CBS Sports Network. Wake Forest won 2 weeks ago, 40-37 at Syracuse. Sam Hartman won 19-32, threw for 330 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Christian Beal-Smith had 17 carries on the ground, 17 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. And A.T. Perry had 3 catches for 137 yards. And yes, all 3 of Hartman's touchdowns. I believe one in overtime that won the game. Army coming off a disappointing 2014 loss at Wisconsin, where Wisconsin scored in only 2 quarters, and if they had not let up the 13 points in the second, they would have likely won the football game. Or if they hadn't let up the touchdown in the fourth, then likely win this football game for Army. Jabari Laws, 5 passes, 5 for 6, threw for 87 yards. Tyler Taylor had 17 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown. A.J. Harrod had 1 catch for 36 yards. Wake Forest 11-5 against Army all time. Last game went to Army in 2016, but the last 9 had gone to Wake Forest before that. Am I the only one that thinks Wake Forest is a legitimately underrated team? If we had... I like to point out the absolute double standard here. If Clemson had the schedule that Wake Forest had, and they were undefeated, they would be a top 10 team. I'm just pointing out they would be a top, maybe even top 5 team, right? Why isn't Wake Forest? Why isn't Wake Forest? Like, I don't even, like, if Clemson had won barely against Syracuse and barely against Louisville, you know what would happen? Still be a top 5 football team. And it's just like, why is Wake Forest being so they're not even top 15. They're not even considered to be better than Coastal Carolina. It's like such an absolute slap in the face for Wake Forest. I'd like to see them make the playoffs. Honestly, prove all these losers wrong. Like, this is a Demon Deacons team that is really good this year. Sam Hartman's a really solid quarterback. Why are we not talking about the Demon Deacons more? I mean, like, everyone's focused on the Big Ten, and honestly, you should be, because it has a lot of really good teams. You're talking about Iowa, you're talking about Michigan, you're talking about Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State. But, like, if we're focusing on the ACC, like, let's be honest, if Georgia beats Clemson, Alabama in the SEC Championship, I see that happening. Alabama's not going, right? Am I wrong? And, like, let's say Cincinnati loses a game down the stretch. You really only have the Big Ten champion and Georgia straight up. And now there's a chance that you could get a second Big Ten team if Iowa doesn't lose the rest of the way. They don't make the Big Ten championship because Purdue wins the rest of the way. I think there's an argument to be made there, right? But, like, Oklahoma, I mean, it's just like, I understand that there's some pretty good teams left out there, but, like, Ole Miss is ranked ahead of Wake Forest. Like, Ole Miss has skeeted by some teams. Eked by. And they have a loss. And it's not, like, great teams. Tennessee's not a great football team right now. I don't know. I think Wake Forest is severely underappreciated here. I think Army's a solid team. I just don't think they're good enough to beat Wake Forest. Give me Wake Forest to win and cover that 3-point spread. 2:30, we got number 8, Oklahoma State, traveling to Iowa State. Iowa State somehow favored by 7 points on Fox. And if we're talking about another team that the AP poll's not underrating, but, like, just the general public is underrating, and that is the Cowboys. They won 32-24 in a comeback win against number 25 Kansas. You're going to talk about it. They were down 13-24 in the fourth. Rattled off some 19 unanswered points. It just shows you that Texas is an absolute choke artist, but Spencer Sanders went 19 of 32, threw for 178 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Jalen Warren was the man this game. Talking about a person that at the beginning of the year was like, he went to Oklahoma State, didn't have a high chance of seeing any playing time. Some injuries happened, and he's the starting running back, and he has taken advantage. And a team that I said at the beginning of the year, like, they're going to lose at some point this year because they can't run the ball. I mean, Jalen Warren is filled in there. And I wasn't wrong at the beginning of the year. They could not get a run game going against Tulsa. They couldn't get it going against, Missouri State or something like that. And it was like, I feel like you're going to lose eventually. And they got Jalen Warren, and he's been phenomenal. Tay Martin had 6 catches for 48 yards. Iowa State, on the other hand, won a pretty impressive 33-20 game at Kansas State. Brock Purdy went 22 of 25, threw for 208 yards and a touchdown. Breece Hall had 30 carries for 197 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Jalen Noel had 5 catches for 48 yards. Now, Oklahoma State leads the series all time, 33-19. The last 2 games gone to Oklahoma State, and they've won 8 of 9. So, honestly, Oklahoma State dominated the series in about every guard you can expect. But, like, Iowa State's favored in this game, guys. This is an unranked opponent. Sure, they're at home, but it's going against a top 10 opponent, and they're ranked. I mean, they're favored. Not only favored by, like, a couple, by 7 points. That's insane to me. I don't understand why the Cowboys are so underappreciated. I understood it against number 25 Texas last week, right? Because this was a top 25 team. Oklahoma State wasn't a top 10 team yet. They were on the road. Like, there was a lot of reasons to expect Texas could beat them. I think there's a lot of reasons to expect Iowa State could beat them, but, like, to favor Iowa State by 7 is just straight up disrespectful to Oklahoma State, in my opinion. I think Iowa State can win this game, but I think they should win this game. And I really would like them to win it as a Penn State fan, but I don't think it's going to be by 7. I think it's going to be eke out win by 3 points. Give me that. Give me Iowa State by 3. 2:30, we got number 10 Oregon traveling to UCLA. UCLA getting favored by a point. Top 10 team on ABC. I understand the Oregon one because they're not coming off some great performances like Oklahoma State's been. And they are a one-loss football team. They're coming off a barely win against Cal, 24-17, where it took a 4th and goal stop for Cal not to possibly pull off the upset there. Oregon has not been playing to their full potential. Anthony Brown had 20 catches, went 20 at 28, threw for 244 yards, a touchdown, 0 interceptions, and a rushing touchdown. Travis Dye had only 19 carries, but for 145 yards and a touchdown. It's like every single time he's getting the ball, he's getting 6-7 yards. And it's like, why aren't you giving it to Dye more? I mean, Dye was their leading receiver for 7 catches for 73 yards. That man is making plays, and it's like they refuse to get him the ball. Now, UCLA is coming off a pretty impressive 24-17 win at Washington as well. Dorian Thompson-Robinson went 20-26, threw for 183 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interception. Zach Charbonnet had 21 carries for 131 yards, and Chase Cota had 3 catches for 60 yards. The problem for UCLA has almost never been the offense. Now, the game against Utah, they had a little bit of problem with the offense, and that's why they couldn't win, right? Actually, that's the case right now. Outside of that one game, even the Fresno State game, the offense was not the problem in that game. It's the fact they couldn't stop anyone on defense, which is honestly a cure for Oregon. Oregon not being able to put up many points the last 2 weeks. Or UCLA leads the series 39-30 all time, but last 2 games have gone to Oregon, and they've won 8 out of the last 9. This is a really interesting game because I would love UCLA to win, knock all Pac-12 teams out of playoff contention, and you're just going to ignore a Power 5 conference, and then it's really down in between the four major conferences in the Big 10, Big 12, ACC, SEC. They could all send one, or you think you can have an argument that the American could send one, whether it's Cincinnati or SMU, or a conference could send 2, right? Like if Alabama wins the SEC championship, I think it's going to be hard. You're going to be hard pressed to find a person that thinks Georgia shouldn't make it, right? I think it makes narrows it down a lot, though, because right now Oregon is a team that, like, really, if they win the Pac-12 championship, I think it's going to be hard-pressed to keep them out of it, especially if Ohio State wins the Big Ten championship. That's, like, the best thing you can offer for Oregon, because you have the head-to-head over them, and you would get in the playoffs over Ohio State. I'm sorry. It's just a fact. Yeah, that's what you want. If you're an Oregon fan, you win a Pac-12 championship. You want to feed another stretch. But if you're every other fan, you really like UCLA to win this game, knock Pac-12 out of playoff contention. I think that's what's going to happen, honestly. Oregon's not playing really great football. I think UCLA is hitting a stride right now. I think UCLA is favored by 1 point for a reason. I think it's weird that they're favored by a point. I was going to pick the upset here, but I guess I'll pick the team that's favored. Give me UCLA to win here. 2:30, we got LSU traveling to number 12, Ole Miss. Ole Miss favored by 8 points on CBS. LSU is starting to awaken. It was kind of like a sleeping giant at the beginning of the year. Lost 3 games. It was just kind of like sitting there like I'm dying, but not really yet. They've awoken, guys, and it's a little bit of a scary team. Max Johnson went 14-24, threw for 133 yards, but 3 touchdowns. And Tyrion Davis-Price had 36 carries for 287 yards and 3 touchdowns. That is insane numbers to put up. Jeray Jenkins had 4 catches for 50 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ole Miss is coming off a barely win over 31-26 at Tennessee, but that's not even their biggest issue. That would 100% be the fact that Matt Corral might not play in this game. If you don't have Matt Corral, you don't win this football game for Ole Miss. Now, I think Matt Corral is going to tough him through it. He went 17-26 last Saturday, threw for 233 yards. Only 1 touchdown, but he did have 23 carries for 108 yards and a touchdown. And Velus Jones Jr. had 6 catches for 93 yards. Now, LSU 64-40 all time. Last 5 games have gone to LSU. Ole Miss there at 8 points, and I don't think with Matt Corral banged up that's gonna happen. I'm sorry, Ole Miss fans, but Matt Corral's a banged up quarterback right now. LSU's playing at a high level of football. Just beat number 20 Florida last week. Now you can argue that Florida did not deserve to be ranked 20th in the nation. I feel like I would agree with you in that regard. But LSU's still playing at a high level right now. I feel like I'm gonna pick the upset here. Give me LSU to travel to number 12 Ole Miss, and I think we're gonna have a lot of playoff contenders go down in this 2:30 window. At 2:30, we got Clemson traveling to number 23 Pitt. Pitt's favored by 3.5 points on ESPN. I never thought heading into this year that I'd be rooting for Clemson in this game to knock out Pitt and destroy a playoff contender, but here I am. I would love for another playoff contender to go down. That would be number 23 Pitt. There's only 3 left in the ACC. That's the last one in the Coastal. If it goes down, some chaos happens in the ACC. And then if you're a fan of any team that's still in the college football playoff picture, you hope that a team makes it for the ACC Coastal and the ACC Coastal wins the ACC championship game, because that's what you want. That's the ideal goal. But Clemson's coming off a 17-14 win at Syracuse on Friday last week, able to escape with the Cuse missing a field goal that would have sent it to overtime. DJU went 21-34, threw for 181 yards, 1 touchdown, and that's the thing with him. I honestly don't really think he's all that great. Kobe Pace had 14 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown. Justin Ross had 5 catches for 51 yards. Now, Kenny Pickett, on the other hand, I think you can say that about a lot of quarterbacks that are leading their teams to. They're still in the playoff picture. I mean, they're doing good jobs this year. All of them. They're really doing phenomenal jobs with their college football programs. Like you cannot, in my opinion, have a playoff contender this late in the year and not have a pretty solid quarterback. You're not getting good quarterback play. You're not going to be a college football playoff contender this late in the year. Now, I think Georgia's the weird exception to that, where you're not getting phenomenal quarterback play from Stetson Bennett, but you're getting solid quarterback play from Stetson Bennett. But, outside of that, you can't have a quarterback that loses you football games. Now, you can have a quarterback that game manages, where you're Stetson Bennett, Cade McNamara. But, Kenny Pickett, it should be a Heisman candidate. I legitimately believe that. Pitt has 1 loss in the year, and if they did not lose to Western Michigan, that 44-41 shootout, you'd be legitimately talking about Kenny Pickett as a Heisman candidate. And I don't understand why you're not. Went 22-37 last week against a stout Virginia Tech defense. Threw for 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I know you don't think that's Heisman numbers, but against the Virginia Tech defense that's been really good so far, 233 yards is really good. Else, 203 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Israel Abanikanda had 21 carries for 140 yards, and Jared Wayne had 6 catches for 94 yards and a touchdown. Now, these teams have only played each other 4 times, and they're 2-2. And the last 2 games have gone to Clemson. I'm hoping that streak stays alive here. Again, Pitt's only favored by 3.5 points. Shows you that no matter how down of a year Clemson's having and how good of a year Pitt's having, it's always going to be considered a very close game. Now, I said it before. I said that Boston College was a much better team than Clemson, and then Clemson went in and beat Boston College. I think Pitt is playing right now at a higher level than Clemson. But that Clemson defense is so good, right? And I think this is going to be the biggest test of the year for Kenny Pickett. You're going against one of the best, in my opinion, defenses in the entire country. I understand Clemson is not a top 10 team, not even a top 25 team right now. But the defense is definitely a top 5 unit, in my opinion. They are playing at a very high level, and it's just that their offense is not paying it off a lot of the time. But regardless, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to pick another upset here. I feel like 4 playoff candidates go down. I feel like only one of them would stay alive in the playoff picture, and that would be Oklahoma State. But give me Clemson to travel to number 23 Pitt and upset them on the road. 6 o'clock, we got Tennessee traveling to number 4 Alabama. Alabama favored by 25 points on ESPN. Tennessee's coming off a heartbreaking loss, 31-26 against number 13 Ole Miss. Hendon Hooker went 21 of 38, threw for 231 yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 pick. Had 30 carries for 195 yards. Dontario Drummond had 2 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. Alabama's coming off a game where they needed to after the Texas A&M week, where they were disappointing. They were playing a Mississippi State team that it was arguably the worst in the division, honestly. If you're going to talk about teams that I would not be afraid of, at all, I'm sorry, Mississippi State's the worst team on that side. I have to say it. LSU waking up, I think it's just a matter of fact that Mississippi State's the worst on that side. I think you got Alabama at the top. I think you got Auburn. You got Ole Miss, Auburn, LSU, all up there playing really high level of football though. You got Arkansas, and they've had a little bit of a slip since then. And then you got, I think, Texas A&M is. I still don't think it's as good as Arkansas right now. And then Mississippi State's the worst team. I'm sorry, Mississippi State. You are the worst team on that side. I'm going to be interested to see if you get a bowl game this year. Bryce Young, on the other hand, had a very good game. 28-28, threw for 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Roydell Williams, 11 carries for 78 yards. If you don't know who that is, you should. If you're not an Alabama fan, right? Because Brian Robinson Jr. has been the number 1 back. This is really an emergence of a number 2 option since their number 2 option got hurt. So it's going to be interesting to see what Roydell Williams does down the stretch. And then John Mechie has really emerged as yet another one of those Alabama receivers that is really good. 7 catches, 117 yards, touchdown. Tennessee's 38-57 all time. But Alabama has won the last 14 games. And they've not lost to Tennessee under Saban. And outside of a 12-10 win they had a couple years ago where they had to block a Tennessee field goal to win it, this has not been an all that close series under Nick Saban. It's not like they're playing close games and it's just Alabama's eking them out every time. It's really been a dominant win by Alabama every time. But I don't remember last time Tennessee had as good a coach as Josh Heupel. I'm sorry. Josh Heupel's a good head coach. I really legitimately do believe that Josh Heupel is going to start winning with Tennessee in a couple of years. Hendon Hooker's a good quarterback. I really do believe that, and I would be picking Tennessee to keep this as a really close game throughout the entire thing if Hendon Hooker was either number 1 going to play, and if he's going to play, he's not going to be completely healthy, which just makes me feel like that's just going to be a serious disadvantage for Tennessee. And if Tennessee does not have a healthy Hendon Hooker, they just do not have the playmakers there to keep this a close football game. Give me Alabama to blow out Tennessee, cover that 25-point spread. 6 o'clock with number 22, San Diego State traveling to Air Force. Air Force favored by 3 points on CBS Sports Network. I'm really disappointed I've yet to see San Diego State play. I would really like to see them on national television, not CBS Sports Network. Like, honestly, guys, come on. Really want to see the Aztecs play, but yet to see them play. Disappointing for me. They won a squeaker last week, 19-13 at San Jose State. Jordan Brookshire had to go 13-27, threw for 132 yards. Greg Bell had 19 carries for 41 yards on the ground. And Jesse Matthews had 4 catches for 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. Air Force, on the other hand, beat Boise State on the road last week, 24-17. Zeke Daniels only completed 1 pass out of the 5 he threw for 59 yards. But Brad Roberts on the ground had 28 carries for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. And obviously, that Brandon Lewis guy caught 1 pass for 59 yards. San Diego State leads the series all time. Actually, not Air Force leads the series all time, 19-17. The last 8 games have gone to San Diego State. But Air Force is favored by 3 points in this game, guys. I'd like to remind you of that. Like Air Force is an unranked opponent, but everyone knows Air Force is good this year. They have 1 loss, and it was a close loss to Utah State, which Utah State's not a bad football team this year. If Air Force... this could have been an undefeated matchup, and I'm really kind of disappointed it's not. But Air Force is a really good football team right now. They're running the ball extremely well. And I think San Diego State won a squeaker last week against San Jose State, and it's going to get them a little bit too excited. It's just like San Jose State's not that great of a team, too, and it's like it took you that much to beat San Jose State. I feel like Air Force is a much better team for San Jose State. And I think if you're going to beat Air Force, you got to bring your A game, and if they bring what they brought against San Jose State, they will not win. 6 o'clock with number 24, UTSA traveling to Louisiana Tech. UTSA from somehow only favored by 6.5 points on Stadium TV. I'm angry. I'm legitimately angry. Can I get to see a UTSA game this year? I'm asking for myself. I would really like to know. UTSA is a team that, right? Like, am I mistaken? Like, UTSA is a team that is a top 25 team. They're playing extremely well. You're one of the last 22 teams that are still in playoff contention. I would like to see their game on national television. I understand that you had to put the Tennessee-Alabama game on national television. I understand you had to put the Ohio State-Indiana game on national television and the USC-Notre Dame game on national television, and then obviously the NC State-Miami game on national television, which I guess I understand, but I understand Fox doesn't run that late. Never mind. I guess I understand why those 2 games aren't on. But I would have really liked to see it. I would have really liked to see these games. I'm really disappointed that I'm not going to get to see these games. It makes me angry, guys. Angry. I would have liked to see them on like ESPNU or something. Even though I don't have that channel, so never mind. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. I would just really like to see UTSA play. They won 45-0 against Rice last week. Frank Harris was a beast, 12 of 19, threw for 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. Sincere McCormick, also great on the ground, 13 carries for 117 yards. And Joshua Cephas had 4 catches for 63 yards and 2 touchdowns. Louisiana Tech's coming off a disappointing 19-3 win at UTEP. If you're going to be talking about some games they have down the stretch, if you're UTSA, that you have to watch out for, I think they play UTEP next week. And you have UAB down the stretch. Like, this is the game you got to have. And you got to have it by a lot, right? Austin Kendall had only went 14 to 28 through 164 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Marcus Williams Jr. had 7 carries for 42 yards, and he was also the leading receivers with 2 catches for 59 yards. UTSA all-time is only 2-7 against Louisiana Tech. The last game went to UTSA, but the previous 5 had gone to Louisiana Tech. But this is just a UTSA team that is just built different this year. This is just a different Roadrunners team. Like, normally the Roadrunners are just straight up not that good. But this is a Roadrunners team that has been consistently good. Now, they've had some close calls. They had the close call against Memphis, and they had a close call against Western Kentucky. But if you remember, they were underdogs in both games. So those are impressive wins on their season. And UTSA is slowly climbing up the rankings. And if you're talking about a college football team that is undefeated, I understand that a lot of things have to go right for UTSA to make the playoffs, right? Every single Power 5 team has to have 2 losses, right? All the Group of 5 teams has to have a loss. Because let's be honest, if Cincinnati's undefeated, they're getting it over UTSA. If SMU's undefeated, they're getting it over UTSA. If San Diego State's getting it, I think you have an argument to be made. But I think they're 22 or 21, right? They're the last, like, they're 24th. Like, all 22 playoff teams. Well, actually, it might be 21 now. Is it 21? I think it's 21. 21 college football playoff teams are ranked, right? So, UTSA was ranked 24th, and that's behind some 2-loss teams. Let's be honest, if UTSA is undefeated at the end of the year, they're going to get in over like a 2-loss Texas A&M team or a 2-loss, what's the other team? A 2-loss, I can't think of, anyways, I can't think of any of the teams that are not in it, but like this UTSA team that I think is really good. I love the Roadrunners this year. Give me the Roadrunners to win over Louisiana Tech. At 6:30, we got number 5, Ohio State, traveling to Indiana. Ohio State fell by 21 points on ABC. I just feel bad for Indiana. Because if you look at their schedule, they have a loss against Iowa, Cincinnati, Penn State, Michigan State. Ooh, dude, that's a rough way to get 4 losses. And honestly, you still got to play Michigan and Ohio State, which means you just have to win every game you're supposed to win. Every game to get the bowl eligible. I just feel so bad for Indiana this year. They played Michigan State really close, but I'll get to that later. Ohio State just crushed Maryland this week, 2 weeks ago, actually, ending Maryland's hopes for a playoff berth. 66-17 domination. C.J. Stroud went 24-33, threw for 406 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Trevion Henderson had 16 carries for 102 yards, and Chris Olave had 7 catches for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Indiana lost 20-15, a heartbreaker against number 10 Michigan State. Jack Tuttle had a good game in 20-52, threw for 180 yards, but 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and those 2 interceptions were crucial, just absolutely crucial, heartbreakers. You had the pick 6. Pick 6 changed a lot, because if not, you're talking about you win 15-13. Now, I understand Michigan State probably does things differently at the end of the game, but, like, honestly, heartbreaking there. And then you had the interception where you just threw it up, and it's just like it was an obvious interception that was not going to be caught. That was like with Patrick Mahomes against Washington this weekend. Stephen Carr had 19 carries for 53 yards and a touchdown. Ty Fogel had 17 catches for 65 yards. Ohio State 76-12 against Indiana all time, and it's a 25-game win streak. That is insane. That's insanity. But you know that just shows you how dominant Ohio State's been over the years. Indiana actually gave them a game last year. Now, obviously, this is a different Indiana team. It's just nowhere near playing at that level. But I do think Indiana's kind of like a sleeper. They're a sleeper because they've lost 4 games, sure. But if you look at those 4 games, outside of the Iowa and Penn State games, if you look at the Cincinnati games, which Cincinnati's ranked number 2 in the nation right now, and Michigan State's, I believe, I don't know, I think they're 8. No, they're not 8. They're like, who are they? They're up there. They might be 6 or something like that. This is Indiana's team that played 2 really good teams, really close. They're well coached. I think they're going to cover this 21-point spread. I would love it if since I'm a Penn State fan. If Ohio State could win this game, but it'd be a close one, right? I want Ohio State to be tired for next week, so that they're not playing as well against my Nittany Lions. But give me Indiana to cover, but Ohio State to win. 6:30, we got USC traveling to number 13 Notre Dame. Notre Dame only favored by 7 points on NBC. Despite USC being a train wreck this year, they lost 42-26 against Utah. Caden Slovis, on the other hand, has been one of those few consistent pieces. He went 33-53, threw for 401 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. 401 freaking yards. It's so many yards to throw for in a college football game and lose by like 16. That's insane. You're just ruining his efforts. Keontae Ingram didn't have the best day, but not horrible. 14 carries for 70 yards. Drake London had a great day. 16 catches for 162 yards and a touchdown. 16 catches in a game is absolutely insane, by the way. 2 weeks ago, Notre Dame was able to eke out Virginia Tech on the road, 32-29 at Virginia Tech. Tyler Buchner only went 6 of 14, threw for 113 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. But Jack Cohn was later the starting quarterback. He was crucial in the ending. But it was not a great offensive performance. Kyron Williams had 19 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown. Kevin Austin Jr. had 3 catches for 30 yards. Notre Dame is 47-36 in this series all time. The last 3 games have gone to Notre Dame, and they've won 4 of the last 5. I think single-handedly, Caden Slovis can keep this close, right? Single-handedly, Caden Slovis is a really solid quarterback. And I understand why he's slipped down in the charts a little bit because his team's not winning. He's still a really good quarterback in this college football universe. And we're talking about some quarterbacks that are eking. There's not a lot of college football quarterbacks that I'm like 100% a first-round draft pick. Like, outside of Matt Corral, I don't see anyone that is 100% a first-round draft pick. I see some options, like Malik Willis is a possible first-round draft pick. So is Sam Howell. But there's none that I would take top 5. I think Matt Corral's a top 10 pick, maybe. He's a good, solid quarterback, but it's just like USC is Caden Slovis. Caden Slovis is definitely, I think he's going to be something in the NFL. I think Caden Slovis keeps this close. Give me Caden Slovis to get the upset right here, right? We're going to have a crazy day of college football. Give me USC on the road to upset Notre Dame. 6:30, we got number 18, NC State. Traveling to Miami. Last week, again, they're only favored by 3.5 points again on ESPN2. I think NC State was favored by around that many points last week against Boston College. And guess what they did at Boston College? Dominated, 33-7 win at Boston College. Devin Leary went 16-24, threw for 251 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And in my opinion, one of the most underappreciated of the college football playoff candidates. One of the least underappreciated quarterbacks, honestly. If you say the name Sean Clifford, a lot of people know who you're talking about. Bryce Young, Stetson Bennett, Cade McNamara, Paxton Thorne, Anthony Brown, Desmond Ritter. I mean, a lot of these names are household names. CJ Stroud. I mean, Matt Corral, obviously a lot of people know. And obviously a lot of people know Jack Cohn. And it's just a lot of people know most of the starting quarterback. I think Devin Leary's one of those quarterbacks that is just slipping underneath everyone's radar because it's not Kenny Pickett. Everyone knew about Kenny, at least most people knew about Kenny Pickett entering the season. They knew what he could bring to the offense. He knew he was a good starting quarterback, college quarterback. I think most people knew what a lot of these people brought to the table. I mean, outside of some group of 5 teams like Jordan Brookshire and Frank Harris that isn't getting a lot of national attention. Most Power 5 candidates, honestly, you're telling me you don't know who Wake Forest... Most people... know who Sam Hartman is as well. NC State, Devin Leary is one of the most underappreciated college quarterbacks of my time. Honestly, he's winning football games, doing a great job of it. By the way, their run game was not a lot of help against Boston College. You're talking about Persons and, I think it's Zahir White, not helping all that much, right? Their leading rusher was Jordan Houston, 8 carries for 43 yards. Not all that much on the ground. But honestly, carried them to a win over Boston College, that in their defense, which is honestly underappreciated. I think 18's too low for NC State. I really think they're a better football team than that. Thayer Thomas had 4 catches for 122 yards and touchdown. Miami's coming off another heartbreaker with a 45-42 loss at UNC. Tyler Van Dyke ended up it was their quarterback since Derek King's hurt, 20-45, threw for 264 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions. Three interceptions turned out to be costly in the 45-42 loss. Jalen Knighton had 17 carries for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he also had 2 catches for 73 yards, and yes, a touchdown. He was their leading receiver and rusher. Miami's 10-5 against NC State all time. The last 3 games have gone to Miami. That's because up until now, NC State's not been a very good football team, right? They have not been a team I think is a playoff candidate, right? I was entering the year thinking it's possible that NC State is really good this year, right? I didn't think they would be this good. Because they were good last year, right? They were coming off a game where I think they only lost 3 or 4 in a season. That's a pretty good season for NC State. Coming off a season where the Wolfpack was able to do really well despite losing their starting quarterback, and I thought that could lead to success. Then they lost their Week 2 game against Mississippi State. I'm like, maybe they're not going to be that great this year. It's a really disappointing loss. They haven't lost since then. They beat Clemson, and I understand and they beat Boston College. I don't think they draw UNC from the other side. The big question mark you're going to have in one of these games is, can you beat Wake Forest? That Wake Forest game is going to matter so much. It's honestly going to likely determine the ACC. Because again, NC State, despite losing to Mississippi State, undefeated in ACC play. That'd be really cool if NC State could only have 1 loss. I think NC State should be favored by more than 3.5 points. I think they're a much better team than Miami. I like the Wolfpack to keep rolling here.